Hello, thank you so much for being willing to watch this presentation of mine. The purpose of this presentation, besides to fulfill a class requirement, is just to kind of review what mental health services we have in our district and why we maybe need a little bit more services than what we're providing. So let me just jump right in. So kind of the focus of my presentation is going to be on social emotional learning and how that fits into providing mental health services in our district. So this is obviously not a real picture of Erin. Erin is not the real name, but there was a student that we had in our district that this story is based on. That when Erin was in 8th grade, he went down to the basement of his house and took his own life. As far as anyone knew, Erin was not having problems at school. He didn't get referred for any mental health services by family, teachers, or friends. He was not seeing a counselor. So if there were any of those warning signs, everybody missed them. And so that's something that I think is a concern. And I know that that has happened in some of the other instances of suicide in our district, that there weren't those obvious warning signs that people can pick up. Just some other general statistics. These actually are from 2016. And so obviously things haven't necessarily improved since then. A lot of research has shown that during the pandemic, mental health needs increased. But in 2016, up to 1 in 5 kids living in the United States showed signs or symptoms of a mental health disorder. Most children who need those mental health services do not get them. 1 in 20 children will lose a parent by the time he or she graduates from high school. I'm sure anyone watching this could think of more than one student in our district who that would apply to. And just 7 out of 10 teachers have a student who currently in their classroom who is grieving over a parent, grandparent, sibling. And so those are just a few statistics that kind of highlight some of those areas of need that we may see in schools. Another statistic that highlights some of these needs is the behavior that we see in schools. By many factors and many reports, kids are getting harder in our district. The example I use here is discipline referrals, and this is just for the junior high school. And you can see I started in 2018. There were 105 log entries that year. 2019-20, there was only 80. But if you remember, that's obviously the year that COVID shut us down for a few months. And so that's not super accurate as far as, if you did a percentage, it would probably be closer. But 2021, there were 120 log entries. So these are discipline entries. And then 21-22, so this current year, when I put this together in February, there were already 132. And I looked today, I didn't count, but I looked today and there's probably at least 70 to 80 for third trimester that are not included in that statistic. So some of the suicide prevention and awareness, bullying prevention and awareness that we have going on in our district. So one are our newly formed Hope Squads. So according to the Hope Squad website, the goal is to prevent suicide through public awareness and education, reduce stigma, and serve as a resource to those touched by suicide. And so this is in our 7th through 12th grades, so it's junior high and high school. I don't know about the high school since I do not work at that school, but I know so far the Hope Squad hasn't quite matched up with that vision. It's not super effective at this point in being seen as a resource to kids who are struggling. So I think this is a good start, and I think this probably can be a good program, but it definitely has a ways to go. So with mental health, like I said, I wanted to focus a little bit on social emotional learning. And so basically that's just different strategies that you provide to students in these areas. And so CASEL is the collaborative of social emotional learning, collaborative association of social emotional learning. It's a big resource for people looking at providing this in their schools. And they have these 5 areas that they feel encompass the main points of social emotional learning, which include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. And so these are some of the things that can be taught and practiced in schools that can improve mental health. So in our district, so we do have some mental health services. Madison Cares provides most of the mental health services in K through 6th. And then 7th through 12th, they do provide some services in addition to the counselors that are available at the schools. So I just have some numbers here that I received in talking with Rick Croft, who obviously is the director of Madison Cares. And so in 2021, they had about 93 students that they got referrals for. 21-22, about 88. They do run a boss club that reaches about 80 students each year. That's managed by BYU Idaho interns. And so with that number, and then considering we don't really keep track of the referrals in 5th through 12th that are the individual referrals. And so those are a little harder to track, but on average, about 6% of Madison students are receiving services. And so if you remember from that first slide, there's a lot more that we would suspect need some of those services. There are some preventative services that are occurring at the junior high. They have a mental health week that is done in the 8th grade as part of the careers class. And so Madison Cares comes in and gives some questionnaires to students on depression and anxiety, some screeners, and then they teach them different behavior therapy skills, such as the ones that they are mentioned there: self-care, square box breathing, progressive relaxation. And so any of those screeners that come up as having concerns, they do meet with those students and discuss those concerns with them. And then everyone in those classes receives the training. And so about 100% of 8th grade students do receive this education, which is awesome that we have that. But again, it's not reaching all students, and there isn't a ton of follow-up after the fact. So we do have a crisis plan for Madison School District. I don't know if any of you have seen this crisis plan. I had to go and ask for it from the district administration. And so this is kind of just reviewing some of the mental health side of the crisis plan. And so I don't think there's too many people who even are aware of this plan. And so I don't know how effective it would be in a crisis situation because we aren't prepared to follow through with this plan because we don't know what it is. So that's another area that we could kind of improve on in our district. That's not going to be the focus of my presentation, but just kind of as a side note. So this is sort of the best practice, the idea of positive behavioral intervention and supports. It's an evidence-based 3-tiered framework for improving and integrating all of the data systems and practices that are affecting student outcomes every day. So these are kind of the numbers that are expected to be serviced in the different tiers. So primary prevention is provided to all students, and it's what about 80% of the students don't need any more than that. They just, that those preventative measures are enough to provide them with the support they need. For those who don't respond to that initial prevention, we move up to the 2nd tier and maybe get some more, small groups, some of these students with higher risk behaviors. And then you have the 3rd tier, which is more for students who are super high risk and maybe need more individual attention. So in Madison, I kind of just broke down where those different factors that I spoke of, where they would fall in this. And so you can see we do have some services that are provided that would be considered in each of the tiers. So we do have the mental health week, which would be more primary prevention because it's provided universally. And then the boss club is the smaller group. And then we have individual counseling and special education, which provides services to some of those students in that higher risk group, either for behaviors or for mental health. And so some of the problems with what we have, we don't have a real great way of making referrals. A lot of, like the Boss Club, for example, I was told that the principals just are told when a Boss Club is going to be starting at the school, and they ask the teachers to make some referrals, and that's how they pick the kids who are going to be in the Boss Club. And so it's not real systematic. And so we don't know necessarily if it's the highest need kids that are getting into that club. And then counseling, and again, sometimes it's self-referral. It may be referrals from parents or teachers, but we don't know how many kids need those services who are not being targeted as needing them and not either self-referring or being referred by someone else. And so those are some of the things that I see as needs, and from what we're doing in our district and maybe where we fall a little short. And so the next slides are going to talk about some of the ways that we could improve in our district. So there is universal screening, which essentially just is a brief assessment taking about 5 to 15 minutes that is given to every student in the school or in the school district. And so what that does is it helps us find the kids who need some additional support that maybe would not see that we would not see otherwise. And this is especially true for kids who have more internalizing behaviors that don't act out and maybe keep the things inside, but they still need some of that support. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these slides. These are just some examples of some different screening tools. The DESA, the Deverell Student Strengths Assessment, I believe is actually coming with the social emotional curriculum that the district is adopting for K through 4. So that would be one tool. The SABERS is another universal screening tool. That's a pretty quick one. A couple other ones, the ACES 50 and the BASC 3, which is considered a screening tool, but from my knowledge of the BASC, it is not as quick as the other ones. It's a lot more comprehensive, and I don't think it would really be that effective as a screening tool. So Tier 1 interventions, like I said, that's kind of the universal screening is included in Tier 1. Class-wide interventions, this is what you would do in a classroom to all kids, and typically 80% of students' needs are going to be met there. So these are some of the Tier 1 interventions, and this is where those curriculums, the social emotional curricula, are going to be take place, is in that Tier 1. So second step is an example. Our district used to have that a while ago. The Positive Action Program is another one that the district looked at. And then the PATHS program is the one they're actually going with. And so this will be implemented in our K through 4 programs. And so it has fully scripted lessons, about 20 minutes a day. It covers the CASEL competencies, so that's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. It'll have like direct instruction, group work, activities that all fall into those areas and are supposed to produce these outcomes, which have been shown in research that it does work. Whoops. And then these are just a few other ones that I researched. So Change Makers is one. Kindness in the Classroom is another one. That one I looked at first before I knew the district was going to be purchasing a social emotional curriculum, because that one has good evidence, but it's free. And then we have the Social Skills Improvement System for intervention. Okay, so then Tier 2 are supplementary to Tier 1 services. So all kids would get Tier 1, and then some of those, about 10 to 15% of kids who need a little bit more would get Tier 2, which could be multiple different things. So some examples would be the Positive Action Program, PASS, and Second Step. So all of those social emotional curricula, they all provide additional resources for counselors or other adults in the school to provide targeted lessons in smaller groups for kids who maybe need a little bit more instruction in some of those areas. And that universal screening can help us find who those kids are. The Second Step also has those additional interventions for Tier 2. And then these are just some other possibilities. So specifically for anxiety, there's Coping Cat, which is for younger kids. keeping your cool, which deals with anger, and then some of these other ones that are additional interventions. The check, connect, and expect is kind of like a check-in, check-out, except the kid that you're meeting with helps to identify what reinforcements would be reinforcing for them. They fill out a daily report card. They help decide if their behavior met that report card and what they need to focus on, and then a teacher helps kind of monitor. So that's another example of a tier 2 intervention. Okay, and then these are just all of the references that I use. So thanks if you made it to the end of the presentation. In the email where I sent this, I also had a survey if you'd be willing to fill that out for me so I can have evidence that I did present this to some people. That would be awesome. And if you do have any questions, feel free to let me know. But otherwise, thanks so much.